My husband left me at a gas station as a joke. When I called, he said, "It's just a prank, babe." But when I got home and found my bank account emptied and my passport missing, I realized he'd planned more than just a joke. So I called a lawyer. My name is Mira. I'm 42, a librarian, and I've lived in Asheville, North Carolina, most of my life. The town's small enough that people know each other's dogs, but big enough that secrets still exist. I've always liked it that way. The mountains surrounding us feel like protection, quiet and constant, like the life I thought I was building with Clive. Clive was charming. That's how it started. He worked in a local renovation company, managing crews that flipped houses around western North Carolina. He was funny, social, and had this disarming way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. We met at a fundraiser for the town's animal shelter. He said something sarcastic about a raffle prize, a year's supply of dog food, and I laughed. We had drinks that night. He kissed me in the parking lot. The usual beginnings. Quick, warm, promising. We got married 3 years later. Small ceremony. Backyard, lights in the trees, cupcakes instead of a cake. I wore my mother's pearls. He wore a pale blue tie that matched his eyes. Everyone said we looked perfect together. I believed them. The years that followed were normal, for the most part. We had routines. I worked mornings at the library and sometimes evenings when we hosted events. Clive had irregular hours depending on his projects. We saw friends on weekends. We fought about money sometimes, about how much we should save or spend, but what couple doesn't? But over time, little things started to feel off. He became more protective of his phone. He started working late more often, but never seemed tired. He said he was stressed. That business was tough. I believed him. Or I wanted to. I remember this one day, clearly late October. The leaves were fire orange, the air had just turned crisp, and Clive came home with this look in his eye. Restless. Like he wanted to run. "We should take a trip," he said, dropping his keys on the counter. "Just you and me. No phones. No plans." I asked where. He shrugged. "Maybe Gatlinburg. You love the Smokies, right?" I was surprised, honestly. He wasn't one for spontaneous trips. But I said yes. We left that Saturday. The drive was uneventful for the most part. We listened to classic rock on the radio. He reached over at one point, squeezed my hand, and said, "You've been good to me, Mira. Real good." I smiled. Didn't think much of it. We stopped at a gas station just outside of Knoxville. He said he had to use the bathroom. I said I'd grab coffee. When I came out with 2 cups in hand, the car was gone. At first, I thought he'd parked somewhere else. The lot was big, full of pickups and semis. I walked around once. Twice. No sign of him. I called. He picked up on the second ring. "It's just a prank, babe," he said, laughing. "Relax. I'll be back in a bit." I waited and waited. The sun started to go down. People came and went. I stood near the entrance for over an hour, clutching the coffee, which had gone cold. I called again. Voicemail. I started to panic, but I told myself he'd be back. He always came back. I borrowed a trucker's phone, Don. He said his name was. He offered to drive me back to Asheville when I told him what happened. I hesitated, but he looked like someone's grandfather, kind and gentle. I got in. He didn't talk much. Just nodded, hummed to the radio, occasionally offered me water or a snack. It was a long ride. Quiet. Too quiet. My brain wouldn't stop spinning. When we finally pulled into town, I had him drop me at the library. I had a spare key to my car there. Drove home, trying not to think the worst. But the worst had already started. The front door was unlocked. The house looked normal at first. Lights off. Dishes in the sink. Then I noticed the drawer in the study. Open. Emptied. That's where we kept passports, birth certificates, important stuff. Mine was gone. His too. I ran to the bedroom. His duffel bag was missing. So were a few of his jackets, his laptop, and one of our credit card folders. I felt dizzy. I went to the computer. Logged into our bank account. Empty. Savings too. I checked our shared credit cards. One maxed. Another with strange charges in places we hadn't been. I sat down on the floor. My hands were shaking. This wasn't a prank. It wasn't even abandonment. It was theft. Fraud. Betrayal on a level I didn't have the words for. I didn't sleep that night. I kept walking around the house like maybe I'd missed something. Like maybe I'd find a note. A sign. A reason. The next morning, I called Janelle. She was my coworker, but also my closest friend. I didn't even say hello. Just, he's gone. She came over with coffee and a pack of cinnamon rolls. sat with me while I explained everything. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she just said, "You need a lawyer." Now, I found Russell Brantley online. His office was 2 blocks from the courthouse. He wore suspenders and glasses that made him look like a stern uncle. But his voice was calm, direct. He listened to me, took notes, asked questions. Then he said he planned this. Probably for months. I remember thinking, how could someone sleep beside you, eat your food, laugh with your friends, while planning your destruction? Russell helped me freeze accounts, file fraud reports, and get the divorce paperwork started. He contacted every financial institution we were connected to. We discovered Clive had opened 2 credit cards in my name. Both maxed. He'd also taken out a loan against our house, without my signature. A forged one instead. And the worst part? He had a second passport. Irish citizenship through his mother. I didn't even know he had Irish ancestry. Russell suspected he'd left the country. I tried to piece together the timeline. The sudden trip. The quiet detachment. The increased secrecy. It all lined up. But I still couldn't understand the why. We didn't have a perfect marriage, no. But it wasn't empty. Or so I thought. Friends started calling. Some offered help. Others, not so much. One woman, someone I'd known for years, said, "Did you really not see this coming?" Like I was blind. Like love makes you a fool. Maybe it does. I moved out of the house. Couldn't stay there. Too many ghosts. Got a small apartment above a bakery. Smelled like sugar and cinnamon every morning. It helped in a small way. Janelle came over every Friday. We drank wine, watched bad movies, tried not to talk about Clive. But some nights, I'd wake up and think I heard his car. I'd dream of him standing at the door, smiling, as if none of it happened. 6 months after he left me at the gas station, he called. Blocked number. I don't know why I answered. His voice was casual. Too casual. "Hey, Mira." I just wanted to talk. I said nothing. He said he was sorry. That he didn't mean for it to hurt so much. That he needed a fresh start. I asked, "So you stole mine?" Silence. Then I didn't know another way. I hung up. Later that night, I cried. Not because I missed him, but because I finally accepted who he really was. Russell kept working. Found some of the money in an account overseas. Got a judge to place liens on anything Clive owned in the U.S. Filed for a default divorce when he didn't show up to court. It wasn't much, but it was something. I worked more. Read more. Sat with the silence until it became familiar. And then, slowly, I started living again. I started going to a support group on Thursday nights. It met in the basement of a Methodist church on Lexington Avenue. Mostly women. A few men. All of us with our own stories. Betrayals. Loss. Pain that ran deep. It helped, in a strange way, to hear about other people's devastation. Not because I wanted them to suffer, but because it reminded me I wasn't the only one trying to climb out of a hole. One night, after group, a woman named Sheila stopped me in the parking lot. She was older, maybe in her 60s, wore long skirts, and had silver hair tied back in a braid. "I went through something like you," she said quietly. "My husband didn't leave the country, but he left me in every way that matters." We talked for half an hour. She told me about rebuilding. About letting go of answers you'll never get. That stuck with me. At the library, I kept my head down. No one really brought up what happened, not anymore. Small towns have short attention spans unless the gossip is juicy enough. After 6 months, I was old news. I started saving again. Every penny. I even picked up freelance work editing manuscripts for a small publishing house in Raleigh. It kept me busy, which was better than being alone with my thoughts. Then, something unexpected happened. One day, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name, neatly printed. Inside was a photograph. It was of Clive, standing near a fountain I recognized from a travel documentary I'd seen years ago, somewhere in Lisbon. He looked relaxed. Smiling. He was holding a glass of wine. Next to him, a woman. Younger. Blonde. Leaning into him like they'd known each other forever. No note. No explanation. Just that image. It shook me more than I care to admit. Not because I missed him, but because he looked happy. Like he hadn't stolen my life, my credit, my peace of mind. Like none of it had ever happened. I brought the photo to Russell. He examined it, raised an eyebrow. "This is good," he said. "Lisbon has extradition treaties with the U.S. We might have something here." I didn't know what to feel. Relief? Fear? Closure? We started the process of formally requesting assistance from authorities in Portugal. It would be slow, Russell warned. Bureaucracy always is. But it was a step. Meanwhile, I kept going. Janelle and I took weekend trips now and then. Short drives to the Blue Ridge Parkway, picnic lunches, long talks about things that didn't involve betrayal or court dates. She never pushed me to move on. Just sat beside me in the quiet, which was exactly what I needed. Still, I couldn't help but look over my shoulder. Every time I saw a man with a certain walk, or heard someone laugh the way Clive used to, my heart would pause. One morning, walking into work, I found a small envelope taped to the library door. My name again. Inside, a money order for $500. No signature. No message. It happened again 2 weeks later. Then again. Russell said not to cash them until we knew more. Could be hush money. Could be a trap. Could be guilt. But the truth? I kept them. Locked them in a drawer with the photograph. Not because I wanted the money, but because I wanted evidence. Proof that he still thought of me. That maybe, just maybe, he wasn't sleeping peacefully every night. Winter came. Snow blanketed Asheville like silence. The streets slowed, the town felt hushed, reflective. And I felt something shifting inside me, too. Not forgiveness. That wouldn't come easily, maybe not ever. But something close to acceptance. I no longer dreamed about him returning. I no longer expected answers. And slowly, I started to imagine a life without fear. Without watching the door. Without him. I started jogging again in the mornings. Not far, just around the neighborhood and once through the park near Town Mountain Road. At first, my legs ached. My lungs protested. But I liked the ache. It reminded me I was alive, that I was moving forward. One morning, just after dawn, I saw something, or someone, that made me stop cold. A man was leaning against a bench near the duck pond. Something about his posture, the tilt of his head, the way his hand moved when he took a sip from a thermos, it all screamed familiarity. My breath caught. But when he looked up, it wasn't Clive. Just a stranger, older, with kind eyes. I jogged past, heart thudding, legs unsteady. That day I realized the trauma hadn't left my body. It lived under my skin. It surfaced in moments like that, quiet ambushes that left me shaky long after the moment passed. Janelle noticed the change. Over coffee one night she said, "You've got shadows under your eyes again." "I'm fine," I lied. "You should talk to someone." Not just me. A real therapist. I resisted for a while. Said I was too busy. Said I didn't need it. But then I remembered something Sheila from group had said. The mind needs a place to heal, same as a broken bone does. So I found a therapist, Dr. Whitaker, a woman in her 50s with a soft voice and no nonsense in her eyes. Our first session was mostly me staring at the floor. But over time, I opened up. About the betrayal. The confusion. The dreams. The anger I hadn't let myself feel. "I don't miss him," I told her once. "But I miss who I thought he was." "That's grief," she said. "You're mourning someone who never really existed." That hit me harder than I expected. Meanwhile, the investigation dragged on. International paperwork. Translations. Delays. Russell said it was normal, but it felt like standing still while the rest of the world moved forward. Then, another envelope arrived. This one was different. No money. Just a note. For words. I had to leave. That was it. No name, no explanation, no apology. I stared at it for hours. Read it over and over. I didn't show it to anyone. Not even Russell. Because what was there to say? I started writing again. Just little things, journal entries, letters I never intended to send, observations from my days at the library. One turned into an essay. Then two. I submitted one to a regional magazine under a pseudonym. They published it. I didn't tell anyone. But seeing my words in print, even anonymously, gave me a sense of control. I was shaping the story now. I wasn't just a character in his plot. Spring arrived slowly. The trees budded pink and white. Tourists returned to the Biltmore estate. Life surged back into town. I volunteered to organize the library's annual spring book fair. It gave me a project, something to pour my energy into. At the fair, while setting up a children's booth, I heard someone say my name. Not Miss Mira, like the kids call me, but my name, plain and familiar. I turned. A man stood a few feet away. Broad shoulders, rough hands, a faded denim shirt. He looked nervous. "My name's Jonah," he said, sticking out his hand. I shook it. Automatically. "Do I know you?" "No. But I read your essay," he said quietly. "The one about betrayal and rebuilding." I recognized the landmarks. The library. The gas station. I froze. "It was anonymous," he added quickly. "I know. But, your words. They stayed with me." I didn't know what to say. He smiled, then stepped back. "Didn't mean to intrude. Just wanted to say thanks." Then he walked away. I watched him disappear into the crowd, my heart thumping. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't a sign. But it was a moment. A reminder that my story didn't end at that gas station. That maybe it was just beginning. Jonah's brief appearance stayed with me for days. Not because he was handsome, though he was in a quiet, weather-worn way, but because he'd seen me. Or at least the version of me I'd put onto paper. And he hadn't asked questions. He hadn't pried. He just said thank you and walked away. I started to look for him at community events, not obsessively, just curious. He didn't show. Life settled into a new kind of rhythm. Therapy, work, group, writing. It was manageable. Sometimes even peaceful. Then one Saturday afternoon, I walked into the local co-op to buy lentils and oranges, and there he was, Jonah, standing in the tea aisle, reading a label with the same intensity people reserve for life-changing documents. I hesitated, then stepped forward. Try the peppermint rooibos. It's better than it sounds. He looked up, surprised, then smiled. You again. You're not hard to spot in a crowd, I said. We talked for 10 minutes. Maybe more. About tea. About the book fair. About Asheville's unpredictable weather. It was light. Easy. Normal. And when we parted ways, he said, see you around, Mira. My name in his mouth didn't sting. Didn't carry any of Clive's shadows. It was just a name again. Mine. Later that week, he showed up at the library. Asked if I could help him find a book on woodworking. I'm teaching myself, he said. Don't want to embarrass myself too much. I helped him find a few guides, then mentioned a workshop that met every other Tuesday. I'll check it out, he said. Then, after a pause, only if you promise to come too. I said I'd think about it. I didn't go the first time, but I did the second. It wasn't a date. It was just two people in a room full of sawdust and strangers, laughing about their uneven birdhouses. We kept it like that for a while. No pressure. No expectations. I told him pieces of my story. Enough to be honest. Not so much it hurt. He listened. Never pushed. Never pitted. Meanwhile, Russell called with updates every few weeks. Portugal was cooperating, but slowly. Clive had been seen in Lisbon, then Porto, then somewhere on the coast. There were rumors he was using a fake name. No arrests. Yet. I stopped waiting for justice. Not because I didn't want it, but because I couldn't put my life on pause for it. Instead, I put my energy into rebuilding. I taught a memoir class at the library. I helped Sheila write her own story, 20 years of silence poured into pages that made us both cry. And I kept writing. More essays. A few short stories. I submitted them, sometimes under my name now. One afternoon, I got an email from a small publisher. They wanted to talk about a book deal. I stared at the screen, stunned. Then I cried. Because it felt like proof that something good could still grow from the ruins. Janelle brought champagne. We drank it on my porch. Toasting to survival and second acts. You did it, she said, wrapping her arm around my shoulders. No, I said. I'm doing it. Still. And I meant it. The book deal moved forward. I signed with a small but passionate publisher out of Chapel Hill. They loved the rawness of the essays, the honesty, the hope threaded through grief. They asked me to expand it, flesh out the parts that hinted at pain but never named it directly. Writing those chapters took more from me than I expected. I revisited the betrayal in sharp detail. Not just the facts, the emptied accounts, the fake passport, but the quiet moments before it all fell apart. The mornings when Clive brewed coffee and kissed me on the forehead, the evenings he laughed at my jokes, even when they weren't funny. I poured it all onto the page. I let the truth stand on its own. Meanwhile, Russell had news. Interpol flagged a transaction under Clive's alias. A luxury watch purchase in Lisbon. Through a mutual legal assistance treaty, the U.S. requested a temporary hold on his assets and began the process to repatriate stolen funds. Long shot, Russell said, but it's something. Weeks passed. I focused on the book tour schedule. Local events, regional stops, maybe a few radio interviews. The publisher hired a publicist. She pitched my story as one of resilience and reinvention. But then, something happened I didn't expect. I got an email. Not from Clive. From his new partner. She found me through the book's announcement. Her name was Marla. She was 29 and from Tampa. She said she didn't know anything. About the theft. About me. About the other aliases. She thought she was marrying a man named Sean Porter, a self-made consultant who worked with eco-villages abroad. She attached photos of them at dinner, of her dog in his lap, of a diamond ring on her finger. I didn't respond. But I forwarded the email to Russell. Then I waited. It took a few weeks, but the Lisbon police detained Clive for questioning based on the identity theft and financial fraud reports Russell had filed. He wasn't arrested. Not yet. But the story made the news. Local coverage in Asheville. Then regional. Then it spread. Because of the book, because of the photos, because of the timeline. People paid attention. Marla reached out again. This time to apologize. She wanted to testify if it ever came to that. Said she was horrified. Said she'd canceled the engagement and frozen her joint accounts. She sounded sincere. I believed her. One of Clive's old friends, someone I hadn't spoken to since before the split, emailed to say he'd seen the news and just wanted me to know. We all believed him. We were wrong. That message hit harder than I expected. The publisher pushed my book's release date up. The attention helped sales. Bookstores sold out in some cities. I did interviews where I didn't talk about Clive, but about healing, rebuilding, choosing dignity over despair. At one signing in Charlotte, a woman waited until the very end of the line. She looked at me, tears in her eyes, and said, "Your story kept me from going back to someone who didn't deserve another chance." Thank you. I hugged her. Jonah came to that signing. He didn't say much. Just stood in the back, smiling. Afterwards, we got dinner. We'd grown close, but slow. No rushing, no promises we weren't ready to keep. But that night, something shifted. "I'm proud of you," he said. "Not just for the book. For not letting it end you." I didn't reply. I just reached across the table and squeezed his hand. 2 months later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from AU, South District Court. A partial recovery of funds was approved. Clive had forfeited a bank account in the Azores and an investment property in Porto. Not enough to replace everything, but enough to start fresh. I used part of the money to fund a writing scholarship at a local community college. The rest I put into a new project, a creative space above the library, part workshop, part meeting room, part quiet escape for anyone who needed one. On the wall, I hung a plaque. For those who rise after the wreckage. I didn't need revenge that destroyed him. Knowing he was exposed, that his lies unraveled in front of the world, that people saw him for who he truly was, that was enough. My story wasn't a tragedy. It was a turning point. And I kept writing, not to relive the past, but to reclaim the future.